South Korea was once poorer than the Philippines in many regards. Back in 1960, the Philippines had an economic size, or GDP, of about 31.3 billion US dollars. South Korea, on the other hand, had about $25 billion. Today, the story isn't about how South Korea surpassed the Philippines, but rather how South Korea became an economic miracle rivaling those of modern countries. South Korea as of 2023 has a GDP of over $1.7 trillion, while the Philippines has a mere $435 billion. The huge gap isn't merely for show. South Korea traversed many issues, from being a war-ravaged country to serious political scandals. Yet for some reason, South Korea has come out as a winner. The Philippines, however, is Asia's big loser. But there is now a renewed outlook for the country. Many are now looking to the future as the Philippines quietly stages regional leading economic growth. If the Philippines continues this growth, it is surely that one day the country can become an economic powerhouse. Thus, this led many to believe that the Philippines may one day rival that of South Korea. But can it really become an economy similar to that of South Korea? Can it become the next economic miracle such as Korea? To understand this speculation, we must first understand whether the Philippines can initiate its own miracle like that of the East Asian tigers. To begin, let us dive into what South Korea has done for its economy and what the Philippines can do to follow its footsteps. The first thing to understand about South Korea's economy is that it had a huge government involvement in the entire economic planning. This approach entailed creating comprehensive 5-year plans that guided industrial policy, investment, and resource allocation. Many economists like to call it the state-led capitalism or developmental state model. The Philippines, in contrast, has historically had a more laissez-faire approach to economic planning. For the Philippines to mirror South Korea's success, it would require a significant shift towards a more interventionist government role in the economy, which would necessitate strong political will and administrative capacity. The issue, however, is that the Philippines' political landscape still suffers from being one of the most corrupt countries in Asia. But that doesn't mean South Korea was a perfect country to begin with. Absolutely not. It had its own fair share of scandals, and even until now, we still see scandals after scandals. In fact, South Korea was even under an authoritarian government, one that was praised for bringing the miracle to its economy. This occurred under President Park Chung-hee, who drove the country from a predominantly agrarian society to an industrial powerhouse. President Park was also marked by serious allegations. Political dissent was often suppressed, and human rights were frequently violated. The period was characterized by limited political freedom, with Park maintaining power through constitutional changes and strong-arm tactics. But due to these, President Park and the following presidents initiated a series of policies that pushed the country's economy without significant barriers. The second policy for the Philippines to follow is South Korea's chaebols. Chaebols are large, often family-run conglomerates such as Samsung, Hyundai, and LG. They benefited from strong government support, which included financial backing, protection from foreign competition, and other favorable policies. The Philippines could potentially do the same. These entities could lead in key sectors, driving innovation, export growth, and job creation. But there's just one problem with chaebols. They are monopolistic and drive economic inequality. In South Korea, chaebols have been criticized for dominating the economy, stifling small and medium enterprises, SMEs, and perpetuating economic inequalities. The Philippines, which already struggles with economic inequality, might exacerbate these issues if conglomerates are given too much power without sufficient checks and balances. For them to implement a strong conglomerate, they must have good antitrust regulations. The third facet here isn't actually a good thing. President Park Chung-hee was criticized for the suppression of labor rights. Part of South Korea's rapid industrialization involved the suppression of these labor rights, which is a controversial aspect of its development model. Put simply, the government prioritizes economic growth and industrial development, often at the expense of workers' rights and welfare. The government maintained tight control over labor unions and often intervened in labor disputes, usually siding with the management and business owners. The freedom to form and join labor unions was heavily restricted. Workers often faced long hours, low wages, and unsafe environments. Whether the Philippines or Filipinos are willing to do the same as what South Korea did is a very controversial topic. It might work if it was the 20th century, but now that we are in the 21st century where social media thrives, it is something that the world will look down upon. Part of the labor rights suppression is wage control. By keeping wages relatively low, South Korea was able to maintain a competitive edge in international markets, particularly in manufacturing industries. This approach was coupled with heavy investments in education, infrastructure, and technology, which ultimately led to higher productivity and economic growth. If the Philippines were to do this, it would give them big benefits. Lower labor costs can be a significant draw for foreign investors, especially in industries such as manufacturing and services. This can lead to job creation and technology transfer. Competitive labor costs can make Filipino products and services more attractive in the global market, potentially increasing exports. But at the same time, there are costs to them. Believe it or not, keeping wages low can impact the living standards of workers. In a country like the Philippines, where a significant portion of the population already struggles with poverty, this could exacerbate social and economic inequalities. A strategy that focuses too much on controlling wages without addressing living standards and inequality can lead to social unrest and political instability. The final part of this study is the focus on economic development over democracy. Democracy is such a big topic in the Philippines, yet vote buying is so rampant that many are questioning the country's democracy status. However, South Korea did not prioritize democracy. President Park has authoritarian prioritized heavy state involvement and planning regardless of what its people say. But we should also understand that the Philippines had a similar trajectory to that of President Park Chung-hee. The Philippines had its own Ferdinand Marcos, which led a heavy state planning. Much of his work, however, was often criticized and a failed venture. Today, if the Philippines were to go back to those days, it would be a big challenge. The democratic traditions laid out since Ferdinand Marcos will resist any form of authoritarian control. Now, as we have discussed, it is quite impossible for the Philippines to do what South Korea did. Things are just far more different today than it was back then. The challenge for the Philippines is to find new paths for growth. But that should not discourage the country about its potential to become an economy similar to that of South Korea. But anyway, do let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.